If YouTube videos have an expiration date, I hope this one lasts 10,000 years, because this week it's Chungking Express from 1994, directed by Wong Kar-wai.
The story follows two Hong Kong police officers as they fall in love with two new mysterious women.
So this is such a wonderfully typical 90s indie movie in a decade of films that were completely untypical compared with most of cinema history. The thing that's great about these films is, you know that feeling you get when you're watching certain films? You notice, okay, these opposite sex characters don't like each other the moment they meet each other, so they're definitely falling in love by the end of the film. That seemingly insignificant character got quite a lot of dialogue, considering he's just a news vendor, so he's definitely going to end up being pivotal in this case that this detective's trying to crack. When you watch enough films, you just start to pick this stuff up. It's not even necessarily bad writing, but it's just, writers that are following the normal, conventional, tried and tested writing techniques and storytelling techniques in film. But when you're a seriously seasoned film watcher like me and you pick them up and it becomes predictable. Sometimes there's a comfort in that. If you're watching a corny action film and you're in the mood for a corny action film, you welcome those sort of moments. But a lot of the time it can be quite disappointing. And one of the great things about the 90s era of filmmakers that came out, like Tarantino, is the fact that they heard all these conventional, tried and tested rules of filmmaking on storytelling, pacing, character, cinematography, and they just heard them all and said, why? Like, why do I have to do that? Why can't I just have a monologue that leads to nothing in the plot and it's just musings that the character's going off on? If this should, in a normal film, just be an extra, gets 3 or 5 pretty pivotal lines of dialogue, why do they have to have any significance for the rest of the plot? Why can't they just fall away? Why does the biggest star of the film have to be the main character? Why can't Brad Pitt show up in True Romance for 10 minutes? Why do we have to film it in this way? Why can't I just have the camera in the back of the room in the corner? Or why can't it be handheld? And why do I even need to show the action scene in Reservoir Dogs? Can't I just show it all the conversations after it and miss all the action, which is the total opposite of what you're supposed to do in filmmaking? You forget about the amateur shit that came out, because there was a lot of shit that, a lot of films that tried to emulate what the great directors of this period were doing. But other than the fact that it produced a really, really interesting decade of filmmaking, one of the great things about it is, even when you're a seasoned film watcher like me and you watch the film and you genuinely don't know where it's going. Even when the actual destination ends up basically being where you're going, like you think this character's going to die probably by the end, or the guy's going to get the girl, but in between you really can't quite tell where it's going or what the point is, if there's any significance to what's going on in the screen time at that second in time, or if it's just for the sake of it. I love these sort of films, and I don't think we've done these sort of films enough on this show.
This film really is one of the greatest examples of a Tarantino film. And he fucking loves this film. He loves this director. There's an actual video on YouTube of him for the American release, because he signed an exclusive deal with Miramax to make a company to release films and other films like this. So like independent films, foreign films to wider audiences. And it was definitely on my version I watched. It's called Rolling Thunder Pictures. That's his release company he set up with Miramax to get this out to the wider public. He actually was on a film festival circuit and he saw this was showing, so he's like, I've got to go and see this. And the director was doing a historical epic called Ashes of Time, and he'd been doing it for so long, like several years, Declan, and he thought, do you know what, I've had enough of this. Let me just have a break from this because it's getting too much of the same. Let me just go and do another film quickly. And this is what he came out with, and it was so kind of disorganized that he called it a road movie. So basically it's all filmed in sequence, and he would often write the scenes either the evening before or the day of them shooting it. What you said earlier about it being 90s film, it's like a moment in time. They'll be at the Chungking Express or the little takeaway that they're at, and the director's very clever, and they were talking about it, like the cinematographer and stuff like that. They deliberately done effects where they'd be still, but you'd get people walking around would be sped up, and some of like the chase sequences would be very blurred and sped up.
Really low aperture.
They deliberately try to do it to get the feeling to the audience that even though these people are in a bustling city and stuff like that, surrounded by people, they feel very lonely, and that definitely translated to me,
That's interesting, because obviously there's the slow aperture in the opening moments, and then the next time you see it is when there's a shootout with the mysterious blonde woman with the sunglasses and the big raincoat, who you only see about 5% of her face the whole time because she's so hidden. Incidentally, that was because she was filming a period drama also at the same time, time as this film. And in order to save time not removing her makeup from that film as she was shooting during different hours, they just threw on sunglasses, a big wig and a raincoat just to cover up completely. So that's why, and it's interesting they build it into the movie at times, as people keep asking, like, why do you have that big raincoat on? Like, what's with the blonde wig? Sorry, the second time, like I was saying, you see the slow aperture is when she's having a shootout. So I kind of assumed, okay, this is clearly super low budget. I'm assuming going to be the only action scene in the whole film. You know, your low budget in a movie isn't going to really show up when you're having a lonely policeman who's been dumped musing about expiry dates on cans of pineapple in his apartment. But your low budget's definitely going to show up when you attempt an action scene. So I thought it was to cover that. But that makes a lot of sense, you saying about the time thing, because you notice that as well. This film is about not just meeting the right person, but meeting a certain person at the right time. You know, maybe you'll meet a great person, but they're actually only on holiday for a week from Germany. No. But, little inside joke there.
Yeah.
Maybe you meet your soulmate, but you're both in relationships at the time that you're perfectly happy with. Like, they're great relationships, but you'd be a lot happier together, but you're not going to leave because you're just like, and you just think, oh, I had a bit of chemistry with that person, but fuck it, and you forget them a week later. And you see this in this film where there's a lot of moments where people are infatuated with each other in different timelines. In the second story, the policeman is infatuated with this lover that he had previously, and he's so infatuated with her that he has no interest in Faye, the beautiful short-haired chick who's working in the Chungking Express, working in the takeaway place. By the end of the movie, when he finally comes round to her, all of a sudden her dream to go to California that she's had the whole time overnight comes to fruition, and she goes and they don't meet again and they don't see each other for another year. For the segue between the two stories, halfway through the movie, between the first cop and the second cop, happens as he comes across Faye for a moment. He sees her and he thinks she's beautiful, and he's literally just in close proximity for her for half a second, and he's kind of infatuated by her. To be fair, that's in theme with his character, because he seems to fall in love in 5 seconds, which a lot of men do, actually. We're kind of more of the pussies when it comes to that stuff compared with women. But it's that thing where you cross paths for this moment in time, and then it's gone again, and that's kind of how you meet. And, you know, you can say in the day and age of dating apps that that's not really true anymore, because you can pluck them out of time. But hey, you know, I met my girlfriend on a dating app, but if I wasn't swiping right at that second, wouldn't have swiped right on her. You know, if I didn't realise she'd actually responded to a message when I happened to look 3 weeks later, would never have actually met up. So it's always apparent that we're going through our lives. Your soulmate could be in Hong Kong right now, and you don't even know it. She's going about her life. You should never meet by all the trillion% chance of whatever the variables are in the universe of the 7 billion people happening to meet, especially when they're on the other side of the earth. But maybe you are, at some point in the future, you are going to meet and you end up falling in love, and it's just that kind of thing. And without hammering it home, because I don't think there is any real predetermined theme in this film, but that's one theme that kind of naturally, organically came out of the kind of freestyle writing and storytelling process of making it up as it goes along, and the night before sometimes, like you said.
There's an element to love of fate and luck. The Instagram algorithms will give you a guy talking about my top 5 films or whatever. And a lot of them would always have this film in it, but it would always put me off, because I'd be like, oh, this is just like, this guy just loves his indie films and I'm not going to watch that. But I kept seeing it pop up. You know, the poster with Faye Wong with her short hair. And as I said in previous episodes, I'm really, over the past few years, like Train to Busan, Parasite, Broker, I really have been getting into Asian cinema. And you know, when you watch a film for like the first 3 minutes, it's weird, Declan, because when he went on that monologue about jogging, I go jogging because it uses water, so therefore I can't cry. And I was like, do you know what? I have a feeling I'm really going to like this film. Do you know what I mean? And it transpired to be that. And we talked about the setting of Hong Kong. This film really made me think, Declan, that the location and the settings of films, sometimes it just really works. If this film was filmed in another city, let's pluck one out, so like London, I don't think I get the same effect. It's like the Hong Kong atmosphere and the hustle and bustle just made it like other examples would be City of God. If that was set anywhere apart from Brazil with like the flevers and stuff like that, it would be nowhere near as good. It might be a good film, but it just really drove home the locations of some films just marry in heaven. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's because you're getting a flavour for the culture. Like City of God, the favelas is vibrant and mixes of culture and races places and slums and poverty and madness, and also a community, old school, forgotten in the more westernized countries sort of way of, looking out for each other's kids. And, they go playing, and, other adults that you don't even know are allowed to grab your kid by his ear because he's being naughty, which just wouldn't happen nowadays in like England or America or countries like that. And you see that in this film as well, where, like you said, the setting really gives a sense of the film. But saying that, it was quite interesting because I was watching it, and especially for the 90s, you'd think maybe it'd be more like that nowadays, but a lot more multicultural than most Asian films I've seen. In the first storyline with the blonde chick with the wig and the mysterious, drug smuggler, she's using Indian immigrants or Pakistani immigrants, I'm not sure, but they're from roughly that part of the world. And it's interesting because the opening 30 minutes, I'm thinking, okay, this is going to have a lot of crime elements to it. Completely falls out of the film entirely, and it becomes much more of a drama, romantic comedy. Not romantic comedy, but you know what I'm saying. But you have them, and then you have also American, or is he English, Western, white guy popping about in the first half of the film. So it was quite interesting in that aspect, where a lot more multicultural than I'm used to seeing in an Asian film. Now, saying that, obviously, look, I'm not going to be the best at telling, a Japanese person apart from a Chinese person. I could easily tell the difference between a Thai person from a Chinese person. If you get to a Thai person from a Cambodian person, I'm going to struggle more, and it's, it's just pattern recognition. So maybe Asian films are often more multicultural than I realise in terms of more localised to East Asia, but I didn't expect that, and I hadn't really seen that in an Asian film before, so that was pretty cool, and it added a whole other flavour to it. And the vibe of the film, the soundtrack, there's a lot of jazz elements for the original score. That's the non-diegetic music, and then the diegetic music within the scene is a lot of American classic rock and Mamas and the Papas. California Dreamin' obviously features a lot more modern music like the Cranberries, which the actress playing Faye, who's also a pop star like you said, actually sings that Chinese version of it.
唔該個廚師沙律啦，
拎走定喺度食㗎？
拎走㗎，你新嚟㗎？未見過你嘅？你中意聽啲咁嘈嘅音樂嘅咩？
Yeah, I don't want to hear that fucking Mama and Papa song again.
Why?
Doing my head in.
Do you not like it?
California Dream. No, it's just it was used so much.
It was used a lot. Yeah,
I was like, come on, man. What do you call these films when it's different stories cut together? Like, so Crash would be an example.
I don't know if they have a specific name. I usually call them Intersecting Lives film. I wouldn't call this that exactly. I don't know if there's a box to put this in. It's not an anthology, but there's two stories that are kind of separate, although they have slight crossover. I'd just say it's pretty unconventional storytelling, and it doesn't really have a box I'd put it in. I don't know. If you think of one at home or we're wrong, then comment below, definitely. But
my point is, this film only follows those individuals. It's two stories, and it was actually meant to be three. But when everything came together, the director thought it was perfect as it is. That third story that was meant to be in this went into a totally different film called Fallen Angels. So I'm happy they kept it at two. I think it was perfect as a two different one. But we're talking about this just before we started filming. I wasn't that endeared to the first one as much. Didn't find it boring, but it was slow at points, especially when you said he's going around into that supermarket looking at expiration dates and eating 50 cans of peaches just because he's really depressed, I guess, from breaking up with his girlfriend. Like, I found him to be a desperate guy. The way he was phoning like all his exes, like, do you want to go for a drink? Oh, you're married now, and like all that. Like, I felt sorry for him, and even Chungking Express owner was trying to set him up with what the fuck was the name? They had a specific name, and he was like, I've never been rejected by this same name twice in one night. So that made me laugh, But the second story seemed to move a bit of a quicker pace to me.
The second story at least felt longer. Felt like it got more screen time. Not entirely sure on that. It was more easily accessible. The actress playing Faye is really likable, and I definitely preferred it. But I would like to watch this film again and get more of a take on the first one, because naturally with these sort of things, it's like anthology films. Unless it's by far the shittest one, you remember the last one the most. You kind of forget the first one because it was an hour ago. Do you know what I mean? And it's a totally different story. You're not even sticking with the same characters, so you just kind of forget it. I usually do anyway. But one thing I liked is, I guess, the film's looking at loneliness in different ways and how you react to it, and how people are drawn to it or not drawn to it or put off by it. And you see the second film, the cop, he's the kind of personality where he sort of goes into his shell. That's his reaction. He's an introvert. When Faye starts to like him when she sees the air hostess that he's had this romance with that he's now trying to get over, comes in and gives her a letter to give to him. Faye starts to be intrigued by him and fall for him. And it's in that kind of way where a lot of the time stoic, quiet guys can get girls just as well, or a lot of time more, than the conversational, social, extroverted guy. It's not really about that. Like, it doesn't matter if you're not the biggest personality in the room. A lot of the time, initially it can be mysterious, and long term that sort of stoic nature can be very attractive and intriguing for women. So she's into that side of it. But his reaction to be lonely is that thing, you know, he goes into his shell. That's part of the whole reason where when she receives the letter from the air stewardess, it has his old key into his apartment in it. So that becomes the plot of the second one, where she starts using the key and starts going into his flat, starts decorating for him, starts like feeding his fish and replacing the fish because he keeps forgetting to feed him because he's just depressed and moping around. And he doesn't even really notice that all this is happening around him. He doesn't understand why he's starting to get cheered up and get drawn out of his depression. Compare that to the first story where he's a very extrovert guy. He can't stop musing on why this is happening, on expiry dates. You know, if he was born in the 18th century, I'm sure he would have been writing poetry and love letters to women, heart on his sleeve romantic. And he's one of them guys, like a lot of us, who fall in love with the idea of a woman. Bit delusional even, you know. He keeps saying, oh, she broke up with me on April Fool's Day, so I'll give her a month to keep the joke going and then call her and find out if we really are broken up for good. And he goes on these long lovely monologues that are silly and about nothing. And he projects onto the drug smuggler when he sees her in that bar after the drug smuggling thing's gone all wrong. The Indian lads who were taking the fucking cocaine up their arse have gone missing. She's scared. She's on the run a bit because she's like, I'm fucked if these guys don't turn up. What am I going to do? She's in the bar. He sees her and he projects himself onto her. He says, oh, I know you're lonely, blah blah blah, come with me. Ends up being a sweetheart. They go back to with each other, don't they? And he doesn't take advantage of her. They don't fuck because she's hammered and I don't think she wants to fuck him anyway. Passes out. He just chills out watching some old movies, eating food, polishes shoes for some reason.
Not just food, fucking I ordered 4 chef salads.
I want to get the chef salad.
Oh, they look lovely. Going back to the difference between the first and second story, I just had a thought. What we get from the second story, Declan, is more fleshing out of the character. We don't see his actual physical ex, we only hear on the phone. Whereas in the second one, Declan, we get a backstory to how they met. She was an air stewardess. That line made me laugh so much. Every man has a dream to seduce an air steward. I actually done it.
And it's fucking true as well.
It actually is. And then you see her and she's drop dead gorgeous, by the way. Drop dead.
Maybe not on Ryanair flights, but British
yeah.
Airways definitely.
She's drop dead gorgeous. And you see them meet. They were madly in love, falling around in the apartment. The apartment holds a big place in his heart because what we see, Declan, is after she's now gone, he's let it go to shit. Talking to Soap, for fuck's sake. He's talking to a Garfield saying, you put on weight. Like, he's gone mad. Like, literally, he's gone mad. But we don't see that from the first guy. I think we just see from the first story the way he deals with the breakup, like, you know, going jogging, the expiration dates. But I did like that line that sticks with me a lot from the film, Declan, is, you know, when the drug smuggler wishes him happy birth and he says, you know, I'll never forget this for the rest of my life. This is going to last longer than 10,000 years, you know. And that was such a great way to end it.
Like, memories really do fade. It's kind of like when someone says something like, oh, let's watch, I don't know, a film you haven't watched in 20 years, but you loved it back then. You don't remember shit about it. You can't say why. All you remember is the feeling it gave you. And that's the sad thing, you know, it's like with friends or loved ones or good times. Someone starts retelling a story, details start coming back to your mind, but a lot of the time, all you can remember was it was funny. It was a good night. Or I had this intense feelings for this woman or this man if you're a chick, or if you're not, if you're gay, whatever. But like, the memories do fade, and it is a shame. Like, a lot of time you don't want them to fade. Annoyingly, some of the memories that really don't fade are traumatic ones, but you wish it went the other way sometimes, where wonderful ones would imprint just as well in your mind and your memory. But also, you know, this film was shot in 23 days, really short time span. He was literally writing a lot of the scenes day of or the night before, which is already a tiny time span to be shooting the film in, any film in. But also, there was originally, the plot of the first one was about kidnappers that would kidnap someone, and they were trying to either get in touch with the mysterious drug smuggler, or this cop was trying to approach her to help him with this case. It was a much more kind of convoluted, intricate storyline that was filmed for a couple of days and then ultimately ended up getting dumped. So I wonder if partly the reason why the first story is not very fleshed out and has less screen time is down to the fact that they literally ended up dumping a decent portion of the filming days that they'd originally done and had to revamp it on the fly. So maybe that's the reason. going back to the second one again, I love these scenes once she has the key and she's going into his flat, replacing his fish and doing all these things. There's one moment where he hears she's in the flat and she's creeping around from room to room, like playing a game of hide and seek that he doesn't realize he's playing, where she's, you know, creeping about, trying to hide from him, because obviously she doesn't want to get caught having stolen his key, even though, you know, it's the film and she's doing it for nice reasons. He thinks he's hallucinating the memory of how the air stewardess, would hide around the flat, waiting to jump out and surprise him. And it's that beautiful moment where, I don't even know if it was intentional, but it so perfectly symbolizes that sense of he's so stuck in the past, he can't see this beautiful, wonderful girl in the present right in front of him who wants him and likes him and he'd be perfect with. And even if it doesn't symbolize that, it was just an accident, it's just a beautiful scene.
In the second story, you're kind of like, will they, won't they, for the whole duration of it. Faye's obsessed with California. She tells him, I don't really have any. My dream is to just save up at this Chungking Express. She's not really fucking interested in it. The customers are going, she's blaring out the same fucking song they can't even hear.
It's hilarious as well, whenever she's at the guy's flat decorating or cleaning up for him, she's always on the phone to her cousin back at the restaurant and she's like running the taps pretending there's a rain, and he's like, it's not raining, and he's like, oh, it must be a local shower, oh, the market's really busy, I'll probably be another hour, and he's losing his rag.
And he does organise a date with her, but she fucking never turns up. The uncle from the Chungking Express has to come down and say, I'm really sorry, she's not coming. And you're sitting there, Declan, like, was Faye a bitch this whole time? It really does move your emotions. I felt so sorry for him. He was like, I mean, I've been stood up on a date. It's horrible. Like, you know, he has his nice little shirt tucked in, ready, you know.
What did you think, though? Was she a bitch? Why did she do it?
She liked him. She genuinely did like him, or she grew to like him. But I don't think she was just ready at that point. She had her motive. Her motive of wanting to go to America, I think, was more powerful than the feelings that were blossoming for Officer 663. She just wasn't ready at that precise moment. We talked about moments earlier. It wasn't the time, you know.
Definitely wasn't a bitch. She was definitely a bit flighty, no pun intended. A bit scatty, a bit, you know, flaky, whatever you want to call it. You know, the very fact that she didn't really give a shit about him at first, but the moment there was this letter involved and suddenly she was intrigued, and then she's, you know, going into the geezer's flat when he's not even about. She's obviously a bit mental in a good way, but, you know, whatever. The fact that, you know, she had this dream to go to California, and you get the feeling that it's one of those dreams that is kind of probably going to be a just talked about dream, or at least potentially just a talked about dream that people like to talk about. I'm going to do this next year. I'm going to go camping for 6 weeks. I'm going to do up this old car I got, and it never gets done. They never go on the trip. And the fact that she was kind of chasing this intriguing thing, maybe nearly as a distraction as well, as much as she liked him, you know, a distraction from her own kind of shite life. Like, it looks fine on the surface, but, you know, she's always daydreaming of being somewhere else. California dreaming, daydreaming. You know, her cousin even says, like, why are you always daydreaming? And shouting at her and the Indian little chef she's friends with. That was a great moment as well. That reminded me of, you know, when you just have a mate at work who gets you through the day when you had those shit jobs when you're younger. But the fact that suddenly she had this thing potentially that actually would keep her in Hong Kong is finally the kick up her ass of like, oh no, I really need to, I do need to actually go to California because I will fall in love and stay here and fuck it up. So like you said, she doesn't turn up to the restaurant, but she leaves a note, and the note turns out to be a made up boarding pass that she's written down, but it's gotten wet and he can't see what it says or where the destination is. Again, there's probably some symbolism there, but I nearly don't want to dissect the film, because the thing about this director and this film is, it's one of those things where the plot is secondary. It's not just like we said at the beginning, where they intentionally trying to not follow writing and storytelling conventions so that they can be unpredictable. I think it's more of a case of he doesn't care about any plot. He doesn't care about being predictable. He cares about striking the right mood, giving the viewer whatever feeling he's trying to invoke. And every shot, every, you know, choice of lens for a shot, every line of dialogue, every use of sound or music in a certain moment, every cut, what he shows and what he doesn't show and just tells you about later. Everything is just there, not to tell a story, but to get that feeling invoked in you. Part of me thinks the destination on this boarding pass got smudged out. So is that symbolic that you're not supposed to worry about the destination, you just have to go on the ride? Or, you know, is it this, is it that? But I nearly don't want to go below the surface. I just want to enjoy the feeling it gives me and not look at the mechanics and ones and zeros behind it.
Yeah, that's kind of like, you know, when you go to the office and there'll be quotes framed on a shitty picture like, it's not about the destination, it's the journey.
Hang in there, kitty.
Yeah, all that. They used to have them in school outside the medical room, and I'd be like swearing at them. The ending's really good though. Faye's come back. She's now an air steward.
Yeah, hostess, whatever.
Air hostess.
Air lady.
And Officer 663 bought the Chungking Express. He's doing it up, openings in a week. She's come back and he said, did you go to California? She says, yeah, but it wasn't even that good, you know? And then he said, I couldn't see the boarding pass what it was. And he said, I'll make you another one. She says, where are we going to? And he says, anywhere you want to take me. And then it just ends. It's like the breakfast.
Like, boom.
Yeah, it's like the Breakfast Club, don't you?
Yeah.
But it's her.
Fist pump in the air, freeze frame.
Her singing the Cranberries. Do you think that was coincidental that she had become an air hostess, or?
I think she didn't actually have the money to go, so she became an air stewardess. She was saving up, but like we said before, maybe her motivation was she was scared that, I'm really going to stay here forever if I stay and fall in love. But yeah, I got the feeling she became an air stewardess so she could go to California and go back and forth. But I didn't really, what was the significance of she wrote it, dated a year later, and she showed up a year later? Maybe it was the fact that she was like, let me go see California, and then in a year we can reconvene and I can see what, you know.
Didn't get it either. But I thought there might be more of an element that she became an air hostess because she knew that his ex was air hostess and he liked air hostesses. Maybe it was a fetish for him. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. You never know.
But maybe that's my dirty mind.
It's some weird fetishes.
But first time I've seen this film, doing separate lists, I don't know if this is a good enough film to get in my greatest films ever. But if I had separate films for decade, I'm putting this in my top 10 of my top 90 films of all time. And this is a feeling shared because Empire done like many years ago, like 100 films of all time. And this was in there. I'm intrigued now to go and check out this director's catalogue. To film this in 20 odd days or whatever, to be writing the scenes the day of or the evening before, you know, to just fucking really do this film Declan because he was sick of another film he was doing, and to produce this, it's fucking incredible. Like, what a film, you know?
Like we said already, it's one of those films where it's not about the destination. It's kind of like, you know, sometimes you get in the car and you're driving and you're like, no, we need to get here and it's 20 minutes away and there might be traffic, so let's go this way. We're not fucking about, we need to get there. And then there's sometimes you just like, I want to go for a ride because I'm bored, it's a lazy Sunday, let's go somewhere, maybe we'll go over here, maybe we'll go over there. Oh, there's a nice looking place there, let's stop and get something to eat. This film is the latter. You're enjoying it as it goes along. I like the ending, but you know, you don't watch it thinking there's going to be a big payoff. Oh, I'm waiting for that twist ending where it reveals like she was the killer. It's not that sort of film. It's a beautiful film that doesn't particularly go anywhere. It wasn't conceived trying to necessarily say certain things, but just through the organic process of how it was made, it ends up saying really interesting, insightful things about, you know, love and loneliness, which any human being on the planet from Hong Kong to a tribe in Africa can relate to on some sort of level. So yeah, easy recommendation for Chungking Express.